not necessary. Okay.
Stanton Friedman just passed away, obviously. Everybody
Yes.
knows. What do you believe is Stanton's legacy in this field?
My gosh. Stan's legacy was to bring Newtonian physics and quantum physics together and present them to the UFO culture, the UFO community, and present that as a major piece of the puzzle. And it needed a physicist to do that, and he was the right guy. And his dedication, I mean, what can I say? I mean, he was Stan Friedman. It's a great loss for the UFO community, but his contributions still here.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Do you have any particular your favorite Stanton story? Did you ever meet him, or did you ever?
I met Stanton Friedman last year at Roswell, and my favorite story was we shook hands, and he was at Kathleen Martin's table,
Yep.
and we sat down and started talking about everything in the world but UFOs. You know?
So he was a good conversationalist, no matter what he talked about.
He was clever. He was witty. He was informed. He was just a genuinely nice man.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's great. Okay. How do you feel about the whole idea of disclosure? What's your take on that?
I'm disclosure. Your disclosure. You know, the 90 people that listened to me speak yesterday, their disclosure. You know, it's going to come from us. It's going to come at a grassroots level. And I think we're seeing it now. I think we saw a soft disclosure December 17th or 16th of 2018 when the two F-18 pilots had a press conference, and the story was carried in the New York Times about their encounter with a glowing Tic Tac back in 2004 when they were part of the Nimitz carrier group. And, you know, as a former military person, I asked myself, why would a Navy commander be allowed to go on nationwide television and disclose this incident with the UFO that's clearly unexplainable? Clearly, this object defied all the laws of physics. It wasn't, as he said, it wasn't from this earth.
Right.
So why would our government allow a naval officer to go on and make that disclosure about something that happened in 2004?
Right.
So it's interesting, and I think it's the start. It's the crack in the dam.
Right.
Disclosure's coming, and you know, I wrote a book that has been very well received. But I mention that because 5 years ago it would not have been so well received. 10 years ago it would not have been well received at all. So I think times are changing, things are changing.
The timing's right.
God.
That's okay. That's okay. This is casual. This is all good. It's the Navy calling you. They heard you.
Join us at Cabo. I'm on TV. I gotta go.
That's awesome.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. That was a great answer, by the way. Thank you. Again, in your opinion, we're just asking everyone this. How many ET species do you believe have actually made contact with humans?
I believe the number is at least in the hundreds. And I wouldn't be surprised if it were thousands or more.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why I say that is I love reading about physics. Now, I can't solve for X or do an equation, but I love reading about it. And one of the things that fascinates me is that dark matter and dark energy comprise 96% of the matter in the universe. So everything, dogs, cats, trees, planets, stars, all of it fall within that 4%. And the rest of the 96%, we don't have a clue. You know, physicists call it dark matter, but they don't know if it's dark or if it's matter. You know, same with dark energy. Dark is just a pseudonym for we have no idea. So I think that our powers of perception are so limited. You know, our range of hearing is limited, our sight, the spectrum of viewable light where we can see objects is minimal, and there's so much in the universe that's just maybe that far outside of our grasp, our perception.
Right.
And so, that being said, I think that, back to my original answer, I think there's hundreds and maybe thousands of different species. I've seen 3 or 4 different types of UFOs. I've photographed them.
Well, that was my next question. What tell us about your personal experiences with that.
Well, my personal experiences began when I was 8 years old, 1963. I in my backyard playing, and I saw a flying saucer over my head.
Really?
I was loading an arrow into a bow. My parents gave me. I don't know why you would give an 8-year-old such a lethal thing as a adult target arrow set. But I'm loading an arrow into the bow, and I saw this shadow move across my feet, perfectly circular. And I looked up, and here was this flying saucer. And it was, I gotta say that it's not just a visual experience. There was more. I lived in an urban area in St. Louis City, South St. Louis, and there were dogs and cats and children and cars and kids playing and all this noise. And when I saw this thing and looked up, I had this definite auditory change. It was like I had my hands pressed over my ears, and the sounds were muffled. There was a weird static electric charge in the air, that smell of ionized air like you get after a thunderstorm. And it was just amazing, because when I looked at this flying saucer, I thought, my God, that thing is gorgeous. I mean, it was beautiful in the way, if you walked into a luxury car showroom and you saw, the nicest thing that they have, it was like that. I would call it sexy, if I can say that. And, I knew a little bit about flying things. I put model airplanes together before. So I'm looking for seams, I'm looking for exhaust, I'm looking for a propulsion system, but there's nothing. It's just this flat disc which curled up on the edges. And I remember thinking, God, I wish I could see the top side. And for some reason, I found myself on the ground. I remember thinking afterward that maybe I thought if I lay down on the ground, I could get a better look at it. But then years later, in retrospect, I think that I went up and then found my way back down. And that's why I was in a prone position laying in the grass.
Wow.
And I yelled, "Mom!" This thing took off and went from 0 to 500 in a second, and it's gone. And I jumped to my feet, and all the sounds are back. Everything's back to normal.
Right.
And I'm screaming, "Mom!" My mom, of course, thinks I shot one of the neighbors in the head with a barrel. But she comes running, and she's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Mom, did you see it? I saw a flying saucer." And she says, "Now, Terry, I don't know what you saw, but you did not see a flying saucer." I said, "But Mom, you didn't see it. It was real. It was here. It was so cool." And she says, "People will think there's something wrong with you. People will think there's something wrong with us." It's the 1960s. It was a little bit different time, Right. I give my children, I listen to them. I give credibility to what they say. But I think adults were more dismissive in that era. So I learned that I didn't want to tell adults that I saw a UFO. Right. That was the negative. Then I saw one when I was age 11. And I have validation for that one. I saw a flood of multicolored lights through my second-story window. And I got out of bed, and I had this weird sense of calm. I wouldn't call it apathy, but just short of disinterest. And I walked over to the window, the second-story window, and I pulled back the drapes, and I opened the Venetian blinds, and there's a flying saucer right outside my window. And there's like steam or something underneath. And it was a bitterly cold night in January, right? And I took the curtain and I tucked it into the Venetian blind so I could have a hands-free look at this thing. And I'm staring at it for a while, and I remember thinking, now I can see the top side. Because 3 years earlier, I didn't get to it. And it was classic. It was a classic dome with the lights flashing, blue, green, white. And I watched it for a minute, and then I thought, I'm going to go back to bed. Turned around, went back, lay down, went to sleep. Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
Right.
Totally an inappropriate response to what I was seeing.
Right. So it goes back to your first encounter where just things are a little weirder all around you at the time.
Yes.
Right? Things change. The environment changes.
The environment changes. Yeah.
Right.
That's right. And the next morning I woke up and I didn't remember it at first. And then I saw that curtain tucked into the Venetian blind, and I remembered. I thought, yeah, this is real. This really did happen. And I felt euphoric. I felt like, this is real. I know for sure now that this is real.
Right.
You know, and that's pretty heavy for a kid 11 years old, because I'm thinking, well, that means it had to be put together in a factory somewhere. And that means that there has to be a factory, and there has to be factory workers. And they probably go to work with their lunchbox, like my dad. And they probably come home in the evenings and they watch television. And, in my mind's eye at age 11, I'm conjuring up this entire alien culture from this sighting. And it was a pretty big thing for an 11-year-old kid.
Incredible.
Yeah.
When did you decide to get involved in the field as far as that?
After my abduction in 1977, my wife and I, we've been together since we were juniors in high school, been married 45 years. My wife and I discovered right after 1977 that whenever we talked about UFOs or this matter, my nightmares returned. So, just like Pavlov's dog, I think I was conditioned, we were conditioned not to talk about it, and we didn't. And I had no intention of ever telling anyone about it. My wife and I shared the story between us. We have 2 adult children. They didn't know. All they knew is Dad would have screaming nightmares once or twice a year. And that's all they knew.
Right.
And I fell in 2012 after I retired. And I went to the emergency room and had my leg x-rayed. And in my book, you can see it plainly. There's an object that looks like a computer chip above my knee. And we back up. I was a runner for 40 years. I started running in 1980 when it was a new fad called jogging, And if you think about it, if you look at old motion pictures and old pictures, prior to 1965, you don't see anyone running unless they're on an athletic field or someone's chasing them. So running for pleasure and outdoors was a new concept.
I know, that's true.
And when I was a runner, I noticed that as soon as I hit, in 1980, the 2-mile mark in my run, give or take 80 yards, there was a spot right here on my leg that would go completely numb. And it was right here, and it was a clearly defined circle. And I could take a pen and clearly define its edges. And it was perfectly circular, and it was the size of a toonie, a Canadian toonie. And I asked my doctor, Doc, why do I have this itchy, scratchy, numb spot here? And the doc said, well, she said, it's probably a histamic reaction of some kind. She says, probably nothing to worry about. Does it interfere with your run? And I told her, honestly, it didn't. So she said, I'd forget about it. And I did. Until I saw that x-ray. And I saw that x-ray and I saw the computer chip, and I knew that was right over my numb spot. And that just stunned me for some reason. That stunned me. It would be like a punch in the face, really.
Right.
And, on the ride home, it was like, where do I take this? What's the root cause analysis? Where does this go back to? And, You know, I came to the conclusion that alien beings from somewhere else most likely put their hands on me.
Right.
And interestingly, the doctor couldn't explain how these items got into my skin without there being a scar. I have no scar whatsoever. And the doctor explained that anytime you breach the integrity of the skin, that's going to leave a scar. And they looked with them. Evidently, scar tissue will fluoresce under a black light. So they looked in the dark. They looked at my leg, and the doctor was like,
nothing.
And I asked him, I said, Doc, how often is it that you see a foreign object under the body without there being a corresponding scar? And he said, for an object like this, never. He said, I've been a radiologist 23 years, I've never seen it.
Wow.
And that made me uncomfortable.
Right. Oh, so, sure, very uncomfortable.
And that opened the door. That opened the door for intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, nightmares, and it started a whole new chapter. And, you know, my wife suggested back in 1977 that I journal everything that happened, because the OSI, the U.S. Air Force Security Police, were questioning me quite vigorously.
So you were in the military at this point?
Yes, I was in the military at age 18. I joined in 1973, and I was in for 6 years.
Okay.
And the epic event that happened in my life happened in 1977 when I was 22 years old and I was a young NCO in the Air Force.
Okay.
And a buddy and I, we decided we were going to go camping. And it was odd. I mean, we were both city kids. He was from Flint, I was from St. Louis. Neither one of us had ever been camping before. And he convinced me to go on this crazy camping trip to Devil's Den State Park in northwestern Arkansas.
Yeah.
And which has a dark past, I can tell you about. Recently, Rodney Letterman's body was found March 29th. Who went missing in the month I started writing my book in earnest was March of 2017. August of 2017, the same time that he went missing in Devil's Den.
Wow.
So, you know, that's when I decided that the world needs to know this stuff.
Right.
And I don't want to carry it with me, you know. And it's like a burden. I mean, it is a burden to carry it and keep it to ourselves. And I'm tired of it. I want to disperse it. I want to disclose it. I want to be part of everyone raising our consciousness and our opening our minds and opening our eyes and just expanding ourselves.
Right.
And I see that as my mission now, and I take it very seriously. And I'm very grateful to have venues, a platform to tell my story.
It's important. That's incredible. Well, you know, let me ask you this. When you've had these experiences, what do you think? Do you think that these ETs are good, bad, both? How do you feel about that? What do you think?
I think that they run the gamut, because I think there are so many species of extraterrestrial beings visiting us. I think that it's a mixed bag. I have photographs, I could show you, of flying saucers, of weird-looking discs, glowing orbs, crazy things. So, I mean, I think that for whatever reason, I'm seeing these things now, you know, and that's kind of new. I've also had a crazy kind of spike in my intuition,
Right.
and that's been pretty dramatic. And
Do you think that these? So when you think about what's happened to you, do you think of it now, looking back on it, as that was a pretty good thing for me because it helped me open my mind to all this, or do you think it was horrible what happened to me? I was abducted against my will. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I felt like I was abducted against my will. I hated these things, and I wanted to kill them. That was my mindset. But you know, my feelings have softened over the years. And I remember there was a big insectoid-like thing that put his hands on me when I was inside this giant triangle. And you know, I was screaming, and I would fill my lungs with air and scream as loud as I could, and nothing would come out. And I'm on this table immobilized, and this giant thing with a triangular shaped head, it's a praying mantis, a 7-foot tall praying mantis, turns and puts his eye down this multi-lens segmented eye close to my eye. And I hear him crystal clear in my head without an accent. I hear the words, "Why are you screaming? You know we don't hurt you, and you know we take you back." And he took this green appendage, tapped me on the head, and I was out. But I think that could I sit down at a table like this and talk with him? I got a vibe that, he would say, "Hey, just doing my job, man. Just doing my job." We were burnt, but I don't think they intentionally burned us. I think that was a side effect of being in that environment. But they didn't kill us. My friend didn't do so well. I think he got a larger dose of whatever it was I had. And I'm also not sure that the medication that they gave him was helpful or harmful.
I see. Right. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, right?
It's a complex story.
Very. Okay. No, but thank you for answering that. I appreciate it. What do you think the end game is to all of this? All of these things? What's happened to you? What's happened to others? This conference, the whole ET experience. What might the end game be?
Something big is coming, and I think a lot of people feel that. I feel that way. I know that I'm different. My life has changed. I'm different from this. And I think a lot of people are too. And I told my story yesterday, and I could see that it resonates with people. In the back of my book, I put a email address, and I said, if you've had an experience and you want to share it, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but I'd be happy to talk to you. And I've got over 800 emails from people. And it's amazing, and they always start like this. Now, you're not going to believe this, or please don't think I'm crazy, but, and then they tell me these are absolutely unbelievably amazing stories.
And you can help them. Now having been through it, that's the thing.
Yeah. I tried. There is an organization called OPUS, OPUS. It's the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Study. And they do a very good job of finding physicians who are therapists, clinicians that are open to the idea that, maybe this guy did open the idea of the possibility that UFOs are real and aliens exist, rather than being dismissive and calling it confabulation or mental illness or something. And they're wonderful people. They do a good job. They do good work.
That's great. Do you think now you have a unique perspective on this because you were in the military for a while? Do you think that the military government are aware of these ET agendas, either aware of and or involved in some programs? Do you believe that?
That's a great question, and I got 3 quick answers. It's got to be one of these 3. Okay, it's either the United States government and ET or ETs are engaged in a quid pro quo. We'll give you technology, you give us a license of limited ability to take people when we want, and we'll get along. Kind of a treaty. The second possibility is that we're working shoulder to shoulder with ET, and the general public is out of the equation. And, but maybe in a few years there's going to be a base on Mars, and the rich, the elite, and they're going to grab the last lifeboat off the Titanic. And, our world's going to be in trouble. But they're going to be safe. It's a possibility, and I think it's a real possibility. And the third possible explanation, and the one that I believe is true, is that they know of their existence, and they have absolutely no power to stop it, mitigate it whatsoever. They're helpless.
Right. Hey, great. Thank you. That's great. Last couple of questions. Do you specifically, and one of the threads through these documentaries we're making is abduction/hybridization programs. So I just wanted to ask you, do you believe that there could be hybridization programs? And if so, what's the purpose of them?
I was visited in my home by an ET. And I called her Betty. And she was like the Men in Black, except that she was a woman. And she was just a tad over 4 feet tall, dressed in black, black sleeves that were very long with 4 long fingers. And there was a red scarf tied around her pencil-thin neck. And she had on a wig that was kind of askew because this was a wig made for a human head, and she had a bulbous back to her head. So the wig was on sideways, kind of. And human beings don't communicate telepathically for this reason, is that it takes discipline to control your thoughts. And I thought, my God, that looks ridiculous, the wig. Now, here this woman is sitting across from me in my living room, and my first thought is, that wig looks ridiculous. But I felt that calm sensation, so I was sedated by that. I thought about yelling to my wife down the hall, but I thought, you know what, they got that covered. And this woman wore oversized sunglasses, and I remember thinking, I wish she'd take those glasses off, and immediately she did.
Wow.
And then I had the thought, what if I think, because it's clearly we're communicating telepathically, what if I think of something inappropriate? So, remember when you were a child and the teacher at school said, don't think of elephants, and all you could think of was elephants? Every single inappropriate combination of things you could possibly imagine are running through my mind. And I'm like, no. And I asked her, I said, Madam, is it possible that I can keep some thoughts private? I'm not used to my mind being open to the world to read. And she says, telepathically, yes, Terry, you can. You can keep your thoughts private. Just try. Now, do I believe that? I don't think so. I think it was said to placate me.
Right.
But one of the things I asked her is this about the things in my leg? And she says, yes. And she said, if you continue to write a book and speak publicly on the topic, my host will come and retrieve the property from your leg. And I said, host? What do you mean by host? Because I'm thinking, a host can be a noun, it can be a person that hosts a dinner party, it can be a verb, you can host a dinner party. She says, you call them aliens, I call them my host. They're not alien to me. I thought it was kind of eloquent, actually. And she told me that she was a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
And I said, these things in my leg, how many people have had these things implanted in them? And her answer blew me away. It was many thousands over 3 generations now.
Wow.
And I think that that's an understatement.
Right. Wow. What an incredible experience. How long ago was this?
This was 3rd week in October 2017.
Oh, wow. Recent.
Yes.
Okay.
And 3 weeks later, November 16th, late at night, 2017, they came back and they took the property. And I had wounds at the top of my leg, in the back of the book, and they took out the computer chip. Now the objects below my knee and the calf are still there.
Okay.
But interestingly, they took out the computer chip. And the chiropractor was kind enough to get me an x-ray. And he paid for it. He was an experience. It blew out in my mind. And when I got the x-ray, I looked at it, and there were 2 tiny wires left in my leg. And I'm like, Doc, why would these beings, 1,000 rungs up on the evolutionary ladder, why would they be so dumb as to leave a piece of wire in me? And he said, they're not that dumb. He said, I got 2 words for you, nanotechnology. They took the 2017 model, or pardon me, the 1977 model, installed the 2017 model, and that's what you have now.
So you knew, he obviously knew something, because if he would have said something like that, yeah, he'd experienced some things. That's an incredible story. All right, last question. I know we've kept you. What do you think is the biggest misconception the general public has about the UFO ET phenomenon?
The biggest misconception is that there is an element of the UFO community that pushes, peddles fear. Not steady, not enlightenment, but just fear. Bad things are coming, and that appeals to a certain, I think, maybe vulnerable section of the UFO community, and I think that's just so wrong. Let's work together toward disclosure, toward knowledge. Let's not peddle fear. Let's not scare people.
Right.
There's no more. We don't need any more fear. There's enough fear in the world.
Right. That blocks the real truth, right? If you're fearful, you can't see things for what they really are.
You got blinders on.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate your time. That was great.